Welcome to another episode of the Pepper Soup Talk Show, where we bring to the table movers and shakers in the African diaspora. Our guest today is co-founder of the biggest incubator for creatives here in the city of Philadelphia. He serves as the Chief Creative Officer for Rec Philly.
Yes, sir.
He's also just a very prolific thinker.
Thank you, brother.
And so we're very excited for to have this conversation with him. He's obviously a creative in his own right,
yes, sir,
as well, and has roots in Philadelphia.
Yes, sir.
Here, so let's get into it. Welcome to Pepper Soup Talk.
Thank you, bro.
Don't forget, we gotta say a little more, man. Got to put a little bit of sugar and salt in there, man. It's a big deal, man. It's a big shot. You also been on the TED Talk show. It's been on the magazine, 20 and under, right?
30 under Forbes, 30 under 30. That's
exactly.
the thing.
Yep. We gotta add that in there.
No, you're right. We can't leave anything out.
Right.
Yeah, this not the show. Yeah, this not the show to leave anything out.
Oh, so you want me to talk my talk then?
Yeah. We want you to put it all on the table.
Right.
Cool. No, but I really appreciate you guys having me. It's gonna be fun.
Cool. So I think we start with this, because we recently met at the grand opening of the P4 or the pre-grand opening of the P4 Hub.
Yes, sir.
Which speaking of hubs is a hub for Black and Brown professionals, based in Germantown,
yes,
in Philadelphia, and I came up to you and you started telling me about the roots that you have there, like you have family connected to that area.
Absolutely.
So can you tell us about what your connection is to Germantown and about your background and how you grew up?
Yeah, man. So when we met, it was actually a really interesting and powerful day for me that day because of how intersected that place specifically is to my life and who I am as an entrepreneur. As a person, really. But so my family's from Germantown. We were over there at Wayne Ave and Zerelda at the corner of that space, which is literally the block that I grew up on. That's where my family's from. That's where my dad and uncles were running around doing their thing. My mom, and my dad lived just 2 doors down from each other when I was born. So that's just my family stomping grounds, and for me, what was really just powerful, what I was reflecting on right before I walked into that space was that corner where Suleiman built the P4 Hub. It's actually the corner that I would believe is arguably the most powerful corner when it comes to my lifetime, because on that corner when I was a young kid, I had an uncle who was 16 years old who was actually murdered right there at the intersection of that block. And because of that, my grandmother who raised me felt it was important that we leave the neighborhood for me to specifically be able to go to high school in an environment where I could really maximize my potential and be in an environment where I could really be successful, go off to college and do the rest of the thing. So when Suleiman asked me to be a part of that project and help consult on what adding kind of a creative space could look like to the hub that P4 is already meant to be, it was really interesting because because he didn't know that I had a connection to Germantown, much less that corner.
Wow.
So I remember the day he called me and he was like, "Yo, I want to come and take you by the space. This is before it was built, all built out." So we're literally driving up to the spot and he's like, "Yo, you know anything about Germantown?" And I'm like, "Yeah, bro." and it was so funny because I'm telling him yo, my family's from here. And he's like, "Word?" And then literally I get out of the car, and as soon as I step out of the car, someone was driving by and was calling me by my childhood name. They're like, "Yo, what's up?" And he's like, oh, this really a hood? And I was like, yeah, bro. But for me, it was that full circle moment of this is where I come from. And I had to go away from that environment to find success, knowing everything my family was experiencing. But then to be able to come back to be a part of a project which is so near to my heart, which is creating opportunities and creating place and space for people to be successful. It was I couldn't have written this up.
That's real. That's real full circle. That's real full circle. And so you said you were in Germantown to around 16?
So my uncle was murdered when he was 16. I was in Germantown, when I was super young. So my uncle passed when I was 5, and then after that I've been in from Germantown to the Northeast, and then from the Northeast when I was, around 16, going to high school and doing that whole thing. Yeah. But, I've been all over Philly at this point.
And did you, have you been in Philly throughout your life? Like, did you stay here for college and then?
No, so I grew up in Philly, in church my entire life in Philly. And then for college, I actually went out near Pittsburgh to a school called IUP, Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Yeah. So I went to IUP, did that whole thing. And then after that, came right back to Philly and then, moved to South Philly. And that's where I actually started my business out of a basement in South Philly, my first company.
Gotcha. So now a lot of people, they leave Philly and then they don't come back. And
I came right back.
Right. What drew you back to the city and to really like build, a name for yourself and like an environment for other people here? You talk about creating spaces and that really being a passion of yours. Like, what drew you back to Philly?
So for me, like, to be honest, like I always saw myself building something here. As a creative, again, I studied communications media in school, minor in economics. And, around the time of 2012, 2013, 2014, when I'm getting ready to finish school, at that time, I'm watching a lot of the creatives that I cared about. These are my friends, who are super talented. They were talking about this idea that they had to go to New York or they had to go to LA to be successful. And I kept feeling like, why? We have so much talent here. There is resources here in Philly. And if everyone continues to believe in that narrative and they go to all these other places, that's how the brain drain happens, right? Where all the talent goes. And it was like, at some point, somebody's got to stay here and build if we're ever going to change that narrative. Right. And, for myself, my business partner, Dave, it was always like, we could do it. Yeah. We knew we could be successful in these other, communities, but it was like, nah, like, there's an infrastructure that can be built here, and we wanted to be a part of that.
And you took on that challenge.
Right. And then that actually goes to this idea of, you talk a lot about this idea of creative ownership. Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about that. Like, what do you mean by that? How do you even came up with that idea?
Yeah. So, it's I studied economics, right? And one of the things that happens when you study economics and you also study like communication and entertainment and media is you start to realize the trends of that. And like, we don't even have to keep it specific necessarily to just like the entertainment industry, but I think like when we think about the diaspora in general, right, we have always been the creators of culture, just period. That's just what it is. That's what we do, right? Before we can talk, we could sing, right? Before we can walk, we could dance, right? Like, and I think for us, it's very clear that now our culture, especially, when you think about like hip hop culture and its roots in just African American culture, that runs the world. Right. But the challenge with the entertainment industry at large typically has been the folks that look like us who are creating the culture are not the same folks who are distributing and valuing and monetizing the culture. Right. So we're finally getting to a place where like, we are having conversations around ownership, right? It's not just let's be okay with the narrative of the starving artist. We're thinking about how can the people who are creating the culture also be the ones responsible for putting on their entrepreneur hat and saying, I'm gonna define what the value of this is and I'm gonna give it directly to the people who find it valuable. So we're cutting out that middleman. So for me, when we built Rec, it was a bit of, let's build this ecosystem that can be a vehicle for that perspective shift of I'm going to go from just thinking of myself as an artist to I'm inherently a creative entrepreneur.
Right. William, can you also like define what REC stand for our viewers?
Sure. Yeah, so REC is...
And how do you came up with the idea?
Yeah, so it's an acronym, Resources for Every Creator, right? So it's this idea that if I am a young, talented person, I want to be able to know where I can go to have access to high quality resources, to create content at a high level, to learn the information of the strategies for how I build a business around my talent. And third, where do I go to be around like-minded people who understand the importance of culture and art, but also of business and ownership. So really that's what REC is all about. And the short version of how we came up with the model, again, I studied economics, and as a kid in college, I'm watching like Airbnb be developed as a business model, right? Which was really rooted in resource sharing. It was, hey, they built a model not owning any property, they were just able to connect the homeowners to the people who needed a place to stay, right? And not own property while they were doing it. Uber, same idea. It was, yo, I'm gonna connect people who need a ride to people who are willing to give them a ride, right? People would have access to what they needed when they needed it, and they didn't have to own any cars to become the fastest growing transportation company. So in my mind, I'm like, well, the reason we go to labels is because that's where we perceive all the resources to be, the relationships to be. But what if we could give access to all those things to creators? We could build something special and not need to own the creators and their businesses to do it. And that's really what birthed the model. And for me, when I had that epiphany around the space and the community that could be built around it and our agency, it was like, oh, this is it.
It's like, that's like that formula, right? And you talk a lot about this idea of like freedom, like ownership is freedom. Can you sort of expand a little bit on that? And what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, it's as simple as this, right? Like, we understand that like we have a really interesting and complicated history of us as melanated people to this country, right? And capitalism, if we just call it what it is. So, you know, I had a mentor say one time, it was just like, yo, like in America and the world, freedom requires wealth, and wealth requires ownership. Right? Like you literally cannot save your way to wealth. They like to tell us that, right? Oh, don't buy the $5 coffee and you'll be able to save up enough money and this and that. It's like, no, that's not how it's done. You're only gonna build wealth by having ownership of something, whether you build a business, you know, that eventually you can sell or it can build you enough revenue, or you own property, right? Like the first way that people in America were really getting after wealth after they were just taking advantage of free labor was home ownership. Right? Because then your property could appreciate and this and that. So it's like wealth has always been built on ownership, but then we were also strategically, you know, kind of excluded from those conversations. So now we're at a point where it's like, yo, intellectual property, right? These ideas we have, our experiences are able to be owned and kept. So that's what I'm all about. It's how do we make sure that we're owning the things we do.
Now, you were really ahead of the curve with shifting the conversation and this narrative, because what year did you start Rec Philly?
So the idea was born in 2014. 2015 is when it began.
I feel like it was in these past few years where this conversation is now really front and center. And maybe it was starting to be talked about in those times, but it wasn't really like, you know, you hear artists now in their music and they're always talking about ownership and all these lyrics,
owning their masters,
right. And it's a trend now. However, it wasn't as much of a trend back then,
right?
And you know, and then now, you know, we're hearing more about NFTs and all these things coming about, and we want to get into some of that too.
Sure.
But before that, I want you to go deeper into Rec Philly, because I couldn't help but notice that on your site you mentioned how you know, you're running a multi-million-dollar company.
That's correct.
And on the outside looking in, for like an organization like Rec Philly, and I'd like you to really define it, right? What it is, because I'm like, okay, this is like incubator, co-working space, and that's not always an easy model to make financially viable.
Especially not in a pandemic.
Especially in a pandemic. And I've also noticed too, just from the research I've done, like we did our research on you, you know.
I appreciate that.
I can tell you someone who really puts mission first and like puts like the why of what you're doing first. And so to be able to like balance those things but to also be able to build a company that's financially viable, like what can you break down
Absolutely.
Rec Philly and like what went into building that business model?
And I'm really glad that you mentioned that point, right? Like the ability to do well while doing good, right? Because that is a thing. And I think because we've watched so many businesses not be mission first, right? And just be profit centered, sometimes we were led to believe that you couldn't do both. So for me, a part of the model was designed to say, yo, this is what good business can look like. Especially when you don't say, oh, I have an idea for a product or I'm just going to build it and then go find out who needs it.
Right.
You know, our philosophy was the opposite of that, where we started by saying, who do we want to be valuable to, right? Who do we care about, and how do we serve them?
Yeah.
So this idea of being, you know, a servant leader is really what our whole, you know, kind of ethos is steeped in, specifically to serve creatives who, prior to companies like ours, folks were thinking of artists as like I'll tell you this, when I first started building Rec and telling people what the mission was, people would be like, oh, you want to help creatives? Oh, you must want to be a 501c3. Right. And I was like, no, we're building a for-profit model here.
Yeah.
So, you know, for us, just to kind of spell it out, what we've built as a model is, yes, we have a space, but really our intention is to build this ecosystem that is intentionally designed to make it easier for creative people to do more of what they love. So what that looks like is, one, we have a 10,000 square foot space, which has 14 private studios that are all designed for folks to be able to create high level content. Okay. Podcast studios, recording studios, we have photo, video studios, we've got editing stations with access to the whole Adobe Creative Suite, we've got a retail store that sits on the front for people who are creating physical goods to be able to sell their stuff to anyone who walks in the mall, right? We've got a Live Nation venue in the back. So it's this whole full ecosystem that helps you grow as a business, sitting on top of this whole educational curriculum that literally teaches you how to build a direct-to-consumer business. So when people start talking about branding, right? Yeah. A lot of us say that word but don't really understand what it means to build a powerful brand, right? And I come from that background, so I had an ability to help creators that were going from 0 to 60 understand how do we build powerful brands, how do we use, you know, world-class digital strategy to engage our audience, and then how to do the scary part, which is to actually build the revenue streams, right? So we teach that, you know, all with, you know, folks get access to all of that with a monthly membership, right? Just like a gym membership, but for creative people, right? So we have that whole thing, and then what's really special about our business is, because I now, you know, have a community of over 1,000 active members who are all creatives of all different disciplines, we've been able to build a really special creative agency. Where now the businesses in our community are coming to the table and saying, yo, I know you have the best creative talent in the city. We need documentaries created. We need, you know, talent for our shows that we're putting together. We need insert all of these things. And when companies come to us and we're able to work with them, we go right into our membership community and we're paying our members to do what they love to do. So it's beautiful because a lot of our members get paid way more from us than they pay to be a part of the membership.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Wow, that's powerful.
And you know, because we've been able to figure this model out, that's why we were able to get Forbes 30 under 30 in the social impact category, because we understand that artists are not just artists, woe is me. This is the next generation of startups, really. Right? If you really think about it, artists are no different than startups when you think about user acquisition and being able to build the model that can scale quickly. So that's how I think about it, and that's really what our model was designed to enable. The same way other incubators for startups are, there's a Y Combinator, right? Rec.
You know, I'm a huge, you know, rest in peace to Nipsey Hussle.
Yeah, me too.
But I know that when he you know, like I was Idris Sandu, like who
that's my guy.
And like he like brought him on as a CTO of his company. I just remember that for me, that was actually like when I made the switch to start seeing artists as you know, either like companies or like you know, CEOs of, you know, like companies kind of like in the startup vein. Can you go into the early days of Rec Philly and how, like, what that was like? Because you guys didn't go straight to building the space, did you?
We sure didn't.
And what was that like? And you know, getting membership and and how did it start? How did what did the early days of Rec Philly look like?
Yeah, so the earliest days of Rec, I think to really paint the picture well, I have to go even before Rec. Right? Yeah. Before Rec, I started my first business with my co-founder Dave in 2012.
Okay.
We built a production company. It was really, and this is, look, we're building this production company while I have a 9-to-5, he has a 9-to-5.
Yeah.
My 9-to-5 happened to be in digital strategy. So before I built Rec, I'm working with some of the biggest entertainment brands in the world doing digital for them. So I'm working for brands like Ice Cube. I'm working for Eminem and Shady Records.
Yeah.
And I'm working at a marketing agency specifically focused on digital, and I'm learning what it really looks like to leverage the power of a brand to make money, right? They come to our team at the agency and say, yo, we got to make $250,000 for Eminem in Q4, and we can't use any of Eminem, like Marshall, we can't use any of his time. How do we use the brand to engage his fans in an authentic way so we can do campaigns to make money, right? So I come from that world. But while I'm doing that, I'm working, it was actually 8 to 5 working there. And then literally from 6 to like 2 a.m., Dave and I are running around the city throwing shows. Like to the point where we were throwing 5 shows a week at one point.
Wow.
Just running it up.
Alongside your 9-to-5 / 8 to 5.
Alongside this 8 to 5, specifically because we're just trying to show love and put on for our homies that were musicians.
Right.
Because at that time we were trying to help, our artist friends make money, but we couldn't get them on the Live Nation shows, right? We couldn't really afford to put them in Milk Boy Studio, paying $70 an hour to record. So after we got to a point where we were literally burning ourselves out from throwing in shows, we had done hundreds of shows. We had, connected with thousands of creatives. And we're like, all right, we have to do something different because again, it's not enough to just put somebody on stage. Especially when you're watching night after night an artist blow your mind because they're talented. But then they get off the stage and they're not collecting emails. They get off the stage and they're not selling you any merch. You could see there's a disconnect between their talent level, but then their perception of themselves as the CEO of their own business. And that's really where it sparked, where it was like, something has to be done here. There's a gap. So long story short, I knew that I wanted to keep working on that problem of how do we help independent creatives build. So eventually I had the confidence to take the leap and quit my full-time job. Which was, some people would say, crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like, just making good money, had great clients,
I'm just smiling hearing you because it's like, what you're talking about is like the shifting mindset, right? Because as an artist, there's just like, it's like this mindset of like, oh, I'm just trying to survive out here. I'm creative, but I'm just trying to survive.
Scarcity
mindset.
Like
go from like survival mindset to thriving mindset.
Right.
So it's like, it's a game changer.
It's absolutely a game changer.
Because it's like what you notice is like these companies at the end of the day, it's like this giant machine, a factory, right? But they're taking these guys, like their creative mindset, and they're making money on it. But at the end of the day, these artists are just getting a pocket change.
100%. Like,
and if you think about it, the creator, the generator are our people.
100%.
So like, what impact did that have on a lot of artists? Bro. Like, what was their response once they got your vision?
Look, man, I'm gonna tell you this. In the earliest days, most artists didn't even get it. There was actually a lot of pushback. Because again, the culture was built in a way where it was like, I'm talking to a 20-something-year-old, let's say hip-hop artist, and since they were 10 years old, their dream was to get signed. Right? So to them, it's almost like, I don't know what you talking about. I want to go to that building. Because in my mind, I rap. I don't want to do the marketing. Someone should do that for me. I don't want to do the booking. I don't want to do this. I want to get signed. So there was a lot of that pushback. So we had to really start to like challenge that thinking, and that's hard. But over time, as we bet on ourselves and started to push it forward, folks started to lean in, and fortunately time started to catch up with the model, where then we started to see later on rappers like Chance the Rapper start saying, yo, I'm gonna be independent, right? And we started having people to point at and be like, this is what it can look like. Because again, the paradigm, bro, like people don't really nerd out on this stuff like I do sometimes, but like there was a time where in the entertainment industry, it was making high hundreds of billions of dollars, but artists themselves were only taking home 12%, right? When you think about that, it's like crazy, like. But also, we know that a lot of the musicians who made some of our favorite songs, our parents especially, the songs our parents are getting married to, right? Some of those artists were dying broke. So it was a very deep-seated like thought pattern that our model was seeking to break. But over time, I think the world started to catch up, and folks got tired of, you know, giving 80% of every dollar they were earning to other people.
So now, when you and Dave got to that point where you're like, all right, we need to approach this differently, or we need to sort of take this to the next step. What was that next step?
Yeah. So. All right, so I quit my full-time job, said, yo, let me figure this next thing out. Wanted to lower my expenses. And immediately, you know, I was living in an apartment, you know, paying whatever a month. And I was like, yo, I can't afford to do this if I'm going to quit my stable job. So I actually decided to move in to this warehouse, which
interesting.
Yeah, bro. And it was a warehouse that like, it was for kind of like artists to make studios, but you were absolutely not supposed to live there. Right, like I actually, like me and my boy Leonzo were like, we're here, we have beds in that joint, and like literally 2 months in, the landlord was like, yo, y'all cannot have beds here, like. So then from there, you know, a lot of people don't even know this, I just now started talking about it, but we lived in that warehouse for a couple of years.
Oh wow.
Yeah, man, I built a backdrop for myself because I was shooting video at that time. I wanted to bring my clients through. We built Leonzo a recording studio, and that was the next step that really changed the trajectory, because we went from throwing all these shows to now we had a space. And it wasn't sexy. It wasn't pretty at all.
So you guys built out that space that
really for us personally, just to be able to lower our expenses
and as a result
create
of that.
And as a result, all the homies that we were bringing through to just create, to hang out, they never wanted to leave.
Wow.
So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I know rent's gonna keep showing up every month. So if y'all also gonna keep showing up, I need y'all to start pitching up. So that way we can start investing in better equipment. You know what I mean? We can start doing that. And that's really where the seed was planted for this membership model. And that allowed us to say, all right, cool, let's build this membership out. We had 30 people that were kind of the founding members. And that allowed us to go from one small room to get 2 rooms. We could build a dedicated recording studio. We can now have a dedicated visual lab. The co-working space was no longer just a couch. It's now a whole space. And I no longer needed to just like live in the space that we were building the business in. And that just caught on fairly quickly. And the game changed from there.
It's just incredible though, because for me, like I think of like the community that you have actually created, of like helping everyone to actually like see the bigger picture. Like when you talk about one artist, sometimes like people only see the artist on the stage, but what you have done is like you have like put spotlight on everybody that put in work to make the artist like who that person, because now you put in like all these different people with different talents, and not everybody in the same room, and then everybody's seeing like how everything, the dot is connected. So I just think there's a power to that, right?
You want to know what the secret was to that? The secret to being able to do that is we were it, right? Like we were and still are our market. You know, so it's like when we were talking about this idea of creatives being able to make money doing what they love, I had just quit my job and was doing it. So it wasn't like I was talking outside of myself. It was like, yo, I'm gonna first take the leap of faith and show you that it's possible. You know what I mean? And I think that like that's what entrepreneurs these days have the ability to do. Like I know you guys interviewed my homie Mukja, right? Natural Club. she built an amazing multi-million-dollar empire because she knew that there were black women who didn't have natural hair care products to meet their needs.
Right.
How did she know that? Because she was one of those black women that had natural hair that didn't find the products, right? So it's like, I just did that. So it's like, I feel like if we can lean into that, the trust can be built so much more quickly.
Right.
Because it's like, yo, I am you. And the only reason I know you have that problem is because I have it too.
Right.
Yeah.
William, if, like, again, I wanted to like slow down what you're saying right now because you're saying a lot of things.
I get passionate about this
No,
stuff.
we got to chop it up a little
Yeah,
bit. You
no
know, we got
doubt.
to chop this up because I want our viewer to truly understand the how powerful you are and the power of your work.
Thank you.
Right. So it's just unbelievable, like what you really try to do. And you talk about this concept of like we are eight. Like you said something about your video that's just like, man, I gotta write this down because when I was watching, you be saying stuff, I'm like, nah, I need to write this down because this is something like I need to wake up to and I need to look at this.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
You keep saying like, you know, young men, we tell a young man like, go secure the bag, but we don't tell them like you are the bag. Yo, expand on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So in my TED Talk, I did my first TED Talk recently, and the title of it is "When Will We Start Teaching Freedom?" And one of the lines that I mentioned, you know, toward the end is, yeah, we keep trying to tell our young people to secure the bag and play it safe, when really we should be telling them that they are the bag. They just need to secure themselves. And that whole thing, it really just comes from a place of like, yo, we have always been hella valuable.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So much so that other folks wanted to bring us over here to help build their wealth, right? So I just wanted to say that like now we're at a place where it's so important for us to recognize our value intrinsically, our understand that we have so many amazing ideas, like we have so many empires within us. We just have to do the emotional work to realize that, bring that confidence out, and know that we have such a fresh perspective as black and brown people that we can bring to the marketplace that we never had the tools and environment set up for us to be able to do before.
Yeah.
Man, you
Right?
like the Black Einstein, man. Trying to get you credit, brother.
Look,
Trying
man,
to get you,
and
man.
you a Nipsey fan, you
I'm
know?
telling you,
Listen, man,
So
it's
You're
wow.
a genius, you just can't claim it. We
To
never
me,
had the
like,
platforms to
I
execute.
want to push you and unpack. Was there a particular event in your life that got you to have this concept like, yo, we are eight. Like we are actually like the source of the product. We are like we are the mover of the wealth. Like we like, you know, was there an event, something happened to you in particular moment, or like this is something like you just came up with based on like being a reflective person, or like, you know, share that with us, because for me, like it's like you about like changing the mindset, and you really embody like when we talk, we bring a lot of shakers and movers into the show. So you are that. You shaking.
I appreciate
I feel like I can feel the table shaking.
Like you are the guest.
I appreciate it,
When
brother.
we envision,
I really do.
But let me be quiet and just let you.
Look, I'm gonna say this. I don't know if it was one event that led to this mindset that I have. It was probably a few. But the thing is, man, it's just like I grew up seeing my family members turn nothing into something over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like I almost like I create from this sense of gratitude where it's like my ancestors couldn't even fathom the tools that I have at my disposal. So it's like if they were able to survive what they were up against, for me to be able to now have the iPhone and I can talk to 1 million people in a second, right? And I have the ability to, you know, have all these things that we know that we have. It's like my role is to take what even my grandmother, right, who grew up in the South, you know what I mean, literally grew up with dirt roads and outhouses, came to Philadelphia, created an environment for us to get just a little bit further. My goal now is to take it from where she landed and take it here. And it's like, and I have every tool in front of me to do that, you know? But yeah, like it really just came down to I'm watching us have amazing inventions because of necessity. Right? Like some of the things that my grandmother used to do and make when we had nothing is just like, yo, she was an inventor. You feel me? Like, and I know that we all have our stories of resilience and ingenuity and the ability to bootstrap.
Yeah.
It's like, yo, we were doing these things that entrepreneurship is built on before these terms were created. You feel me? Like when they was like, yo, as a startup owner, you gotta understand how to bootstrap. I'm like, perfect. I've been bootstrapping my whole life. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, design thinking, like, bet. Like, that's just how I think. Like, so I just think we were so predisposed to be entrepreneurs and be wealth creators. It's just we got to embody it and take that opportunity to do so. For real.
Man.
Go ahead.
Man, well, first of all, I just want to thank everyone who's tuning in to Pepper Soup Talk right now. We got with us Will Toms. And, he's blessing us with a lot of knowledge and insight. If you like what you see so far, please go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Make sure to hit the notification button at the top right and give us a thumbs up if you like the conversation so far.
William, he's out here, man. He's just decoding our minds. He's just helping us to connect the dots. Yeah. And for me, like when I just hear you, what resonated with me the most is this idea of getting out of this victim mindset.
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about that, because there's this narrative, right, that we've been through a lot, like because like we don't have lack of access to X, Y, and Z, so our circumstance, it is what it is because somebody is like dictating. So just not being a victim, like talk to us about that.
I think that's the first thing that's just super important for us to do is get rid of the victim mindset and also get out of the scarcity mindset. And it's not easy to do, right? But it's so important because it's just like, if when you grow up in a city like Philadelphia, it's a tough city, and like we're always competing for the little bit of resources that we feel are available, and everyone's trying to fight for that one opportunity that we think someone else is going to give us, and if that other person gets it, then that means that I'm not going to get it, which is that scarcity mindset, when really what we should be doing is figuring out how we can collaborate to create our own opportunities, right? Like that's really how it works. It's network across, right? Y'all are building, I'm building, let's do our thing, instead of like, oh, well, who's that famous person that we can go and get that's going to launch us? It's like, that ain't it. But the whole victim mindset thing, I think just really comes down to, we have to remind ourselves that everything is our fault. And what I mean when I say that, and that could be very charged.
You got to expand on that.
William, be careful now.
And I said it that way because I know it's kind of charged, right? Like we did not put ourselves in the situations of poverty that we did, but if we stay there, it's our fault, right? So Saya said this to me one time recently, and I think it sums this whole thing we're talking about up really well. She said, if you're not actively changing it, you're choosing it. And it's as simple as that. Like,
because it's a choice by not acting.
Right. Because just the information is out here, right? So if it's like, yo, I don't have a lot of money, and it's been 5 years now, you ain't had a lot of money, you're choosing to not have a lot of money. And there's so many factors that are in our way as black and brown people, 100%, but no one's coming to save us. Like, unfortunately, Kamala and Joe are not about to change our lives and just give us a bunch of bread. But what we could do is go on YouTube and start figuring out how the people who have bread have gotten the bread.
Man, shout out to YouTube University. YouTube is changing a lot of lives every single day.
And again, it's just like, yo, if our parents could do it with way less than we have no excuse.
I think more than that too, because that's very true. Getting out of that mindset that someone's coming to save us, or realizing nobody's coming to save us.
Right.
But then having models or having blueprints or having people to be able to like know how to navigate, because it's also, when you don't have the awareness or you don't have the knowledge to know how to get to the next step or know how to get to the destination or know what direction to move in, that can be challenging. And I think that's what makes having a Rec Philly so important, because then it helps with being able to connect the dots, or helps being able to fill the gaps.
That idea is exactly why I do things like this.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you, man. It's almost impossible to be what you can't see.
Yeah.
So if you don't have models of like, what does it look like to be from where I'm from? Look how I look, and be able to build something.
Right.
It's almost impossible. And that's the thing that almost like gave me a sense of responsibility to be like, yo, I got to talk more.
Right.
You feel me? Because if not, you know, I know my little cousins, they want to rap.
Right.
They want to play ball.
Right.
Not just because they love those things, but because that's what they think.
Right.
That's what the ways out are.
Right. That's what they see, and that's what you know, the options are in their mind. And that's why we do Pepper Soup Talk. You know, because like this medium for knowledge share, to be able to see people who have got into a certain place and be able to, number one, know that there are a lot of different ways to become successful. Yeah. And to like be able to like, right, like you said, like be able to see it, to like then also help you believe it.
Absolutely.
And so to not peel back the layers, you know, more like of your story, right? Because from hearing you speak, Rec Philly and your path, like, a lot of it unfolded organically. Like you talk about being in the studio where like you're building out the space as and by the way, like you had the savviness to also know like, I need to this financial, I need to find a way to make this work. I got to cut down on my expenses and whatnot, which took a level of like mindfulness there too. But it also came about very organically as you were building. Like now, can you talk more about like that you know, building it out? Like was this the Rec Philly that is down at in the fashion district at the time? Is this you know, like where are we to paint that picture for us?
I think to be clear, like a lot of what we did fortunately came very organically. But I would be remiss if I didn't say that like the root of it was out of a place of intention. Like, I'll be honest, I've been this nerd for a long time. You feel me? Like I was building business plans in high school. I was building business plans with Dave in college, right? So the idea of building a business that would serve creators, you know, and allow us to always be around creative people, that's been our intention. And I think the thing that happens is if you set that intention and do whatever you can do to the best of your knowledge at that time to get closer and closer to it, God is gonna meet you halfway and then present the opportunities for you to manifest it. You know, so like it's that organic thing, but it's also like we chose to solve the problems of creatives. You know what I mean? But again, you know, like I said, we started off in that warehouse in North Philly. Okay. 9th and Dolphin. Okay. You know what I'm saying? 4 flights of stairs, no elevator. So it was a long walk up, no heat, no AC. We was thugging it out. Like, and at that time it was like, yo, all we know is that we need access to these tools. We want to have these conversations, and we believe that there's hundreds, if not thousands of other people in our city that also want that same exact thing. And we could see the impact early. And we just kept chasing that idea of like, how do we be of service? How do we be of service? So the model that y'all see today at the Fashion District, absolutely not was that it 4 years ago or 5 years ago. It had to just keep morphing and molding and taking the shape. And I think as, again, the world caught up and technology caught up to a place, it birthed itself, right? But, you know, if it didn't look like this, I'd still be helping creative people win. It just made it look different, you know?
I mean, again, I just think I want people to get the bigger picture here, what you're trying to do, William. It's like people look at New York, for example, right? New York is known like the Big Apple. Like this is where all the financial institutions are. Philly has a lot of school where people come in, like went to, you know, Aki and I went to Ivy League school, Penn, and all we do is just stay here and go back to New York because that's where the bank was, that's where the money was. And you go to DC. DC is known like, oh, this is where the politician lives and all this stuff. But then you look at Philly, right? Philly is known for its creativity, artists and stuff like that. So it's
a culture hub.
It's a culture hub, but it's something like we don't view as an asset, as a gateway to wealth.
Right.
And you helping people to see that.
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, like, why is this so important to you, particularly for this city?
That's a good
And what would
question.
happen once people see Philly
Yeah.
from the way you see it?
Yeah.
And how would that impact the rest of East Coast and the rest of like the world?
Man, I love this question.
Oh, good.
Thank you for asking. Look,
I just
here's what I know, and I'm a nerd out a little bit, right? So,
We're here for it.
ready?
wait,
here
let
for
us
it.
know, man.
Born here, raised here. What I know about our city is there was a study they did. Pew did this study, and they said 41% of our population in Philadelphia are black people.
Yes.
However, only 2.8% of our businesses are owned by black people. Right?
That's a statistic.
We are literally the largest and also poorest black city.
Yeah.
Right? So 41% population, less than 3% of businesses owned by black people, huge gap. But like you mentioned, so much cultural export happening from a lot of the biggest musicians in the world have bands that are Philly musicians backing them, right? A lot of our favorite songs that are on the radio each and every day were written by Philly songwriters, right? Like my homie Ben, he's an engineer from Philly. He's actually from Germantown as well. 24 years old. Today, the list just dropped. Ben got nominated for not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 Grammys.
Wow.
At 24 years old, he's from Philly, right? So to me, again, I don't think of him as just an artist. I know Ben is a creative entrepreneur.
Yeah.
That if the infrastructure is not here, he will then take his creative ability and go to a different city's economy and create that capital.
Right.
So for me, it's like my North Star with building this business in Philly was to be able to close that gap where we finally recognize our creative talent as the entrepreneurs they are. So instead of 2.8% of our businesses being owned by black people, we're seeing that get to 5 to 10 to 20 to 30 to eventually I want to see 41% of our businesses be owned by black people. And I know that the quickest way to start that is to do it through what we know, which is culture.
Yeah.
And if we can do it through culture, then we're going to have a society where we have people that look like you and I, that are creative, they're building their businesses. Ben's going to come back to Philly and then own a house in Philly at some point, right? He's going to be a property owner. And then instead of our neighborhoods getting gentrified by people from New York and all these other places that don't look like us, we're going to have black people who respect our neighborhoods, who gentrify them ourselves and raise those property values and build that wealth. And then what's going to happen? We're going to be the ones paying taxes. Then we're going to be able to dictate and say that our schools, our public schools are going to be better. So then what happens? The next generation of young people have better access to schools. Then what happens? Finally, if I'm a kid that lives in West Philly, blocks away from Penn, I grow up every day looking at Penn and actually be able to go to a high school in the city that gives me access to getting there one day and actually being able to be at Penn, right? There are so many young people who have grown up and watched the Penn's campus every day of their lives that will never have an opportunity to be a student there. So when we talk about what we're doing at REC, it's about ownership, it's about equity, because I personally believe that the only way we're going to get to social equity is through financial equity. So let's teach business
100%.
through culture so we can take
100%.
these steps to redevelop cities from the inside out.
Yeah.
Teach business first.
Teach business first. Because, and I'll say this too, right? Sometimes when we talk about like creatives and building businesses and all that, sometimes people think that like, I'm saying that REC is going to create the next Beyonce. I don't mean that. If we do, that's great. That's just a happenstance byproduct.
Right.
But what I do know is there's hundreds of our members who wrote their very first business plan because they came to REC programming. And whether or not they still rap or sing in 10 years is who cares?
Yeah.
But they're going to be able to build some business because now they have the foundation of what building a business looks like. They're going to be less intimidated about getting their LLC. They're going to be less intimidated about understanding customer acquisition.
Yeah.
So whatever they do, they're more equipped to be in the business sector in general. But I got to meet them at something they were already passionate about, which right now is art.
So William, I was checking out your social media page and I saw that you had a post about Will Smith's new book.
Oh yeah, shout out Will Smith.
Right.
One of the original creative entrepreneurs, you feel me?
Right.
From
like,
Philadelphia.
From Philly.
From Philly, right? But it's like you're talking about this idea of like how Philly has generated these big stars, right?
Yeah.
But somehow we're not seeing the city reflective of that, or that narrative is not really like what the world is catching up to. People still looking down on Philly. Like people are still ashamed of things. So like, what can you say to someone like Will Smith to really help change that narrative? Because they're big star. Will Smith is a big star, right?
Will Smith is huge. He's probably one of the most recognizable faces on the planet.
So what can you say to someone like to him? If he was in front of you right now, if he was next to you.
Will, you probably listening now, right? If you tap in, your team, we should have a conversation.
And keep it real with us, man.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, look, I think folks like Will Smith, Kevin Hart, Lil Uzi, they built an incredible amount of success. And I know that they understand that it was not an easy journey to do that. I know they understand how much they had to sacrifice and how much they've had to struggle to do that. And they had to go to a different place to find the success and the opportunity. So knowing what they know, I think it would be really dope for us all to be able to collaborate to really break down the barriers for the next generation. So not everyone has to be willing to be the run through walls anomaly in order to, not be superstars like Will Smith, but at least to be able to make $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year doing what they love to do. And I happen to have built the model alongside my team to make that possible. So we should have a conversation.
All right. So we're actually going to tag Will Smith based on that response, because we do need to start engaging that type of conversation.
We should.
Right? And we're not afraid to do it. So Will, we're speaking to you, brother. Come on the talk show and talk to our man.
Pull up, Will.
Definitely.
Right,
Let's get it done.
Up. Kevin Hart, pull up.
Let's get it done.
So Will, I'm talking about Will and Will.
Oh, man, about to have a Will meet Will moment. Yeah.
So now, Will, I've seen Rec Philly down in Fashion District. The space is immaculate.
Thank you, brother.
And when I see it, the first thing that comes to my mind, like, and having speaking to you now, I think it's like this is a vision that's really come to life. Was there a point in time where you felt like, oh, well, we've arrived, like we made this happen? Because the journey always continues, right? It's always
absolutely. We're just getting started.
Right. So like, what does it feel like in having built out this space? Because there's also something that's also symbolic of building out that actual brick and mortar, like institutionalizing what you guys have done. Like, what is that? What did that feel like when it was finished, and like what does it feel like now with where you're going next? Yeah.
I mean, grand opening and like just getting it done, cutting the ribbon, and like standing on the stage at our grand opening party. It was one of the best feelings in my life. Just to keep it all the way above. Like, tears were shed, because I know what not only myself but especially what my team has sacrificed to make this possible. And to be honest with you, the moment that I put even higher on the pedestal than cutting that ribbon at grand opening was when we first, Dave and I, we had a moment around it for sure. When the first time we were able to pay our staff a full salary and benefits. You know what I mean? Again, like we were just two dudes in the warehouse in North Philly with a big vision. And we're lucky enough to have people who wanted to volunteer their time to help us bring it to fruition. So going from knowing, we're not paying our folks what they're worth and, we're just figuring it out day by day, but then eventually to be able to say like, yo, here you go. Here's your salary. Here's your benefits. And knowing that like there's real livelihoods being built. That moment was probably the most special in my journey so far.
Incredible.
That's powerful.
But we just getting started, bro. So like there isn't still this like, aha, we did it moment. Like I'm still like hustling every day. Like there's so much work to do.
Man, definitely. Well, we could go on all night, man. Because I'm just like, yo, this guy is like a think tank of knowledge. Yo,
now, I'm gonna be honest. Like because I've seen a lot of your videos too, and there's that people put out that message on social media sometimes. They're like $1 million or dinner with Jay-Z. and like hearing you speak, I'm like they need to add $1 million or dinner with Will Thomas.
Yeah, man.
For real. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
I keep thank you for stating that. That's
For
actually
real.
true, man.
I appreciate
So
y'all.
I know you sort of focus on like artists, creative artists, but what can other people in other fields pick up from what you're doing? Because I just think that
Ooh.
the formula that
Yeah.
you have right now is actually transferable
100%.
to athletes.
Here,
To
yeah.
again, like this could go far, man.
I think,
like
look,
talk to us about
For everyone who's listening, right, especially people of the diaspora, I think the one thing I would like to challenge people to take away from my story and my journey, especially if you're not a creative, I want to challenge them to say, yo, who do I care about? Who do I want to serve? What problems are unique to those folks? And know that if they have the courage, they can build something specifically for them. That could be in any field. You know what I'm saying? And like the media field, it's just a bit easier because we create that content, throw it right on Instagram, yada, yada, yada. But that idea of like solving the problems that are most dearest to you and not wanting to wait on a big institution to give you permission, yo, wave your flag, talk about your cause, and use media to get the word out, knowing that we don't need nobody else but us. And that's
again,
anyone can
well,
understand
you could
that.
jump in here because only you could speak the way you do. So if you listening right now, basically like get your pen out. What Will is pretty much trying to tell us right now, this is the formula to success.
That's
Yeah.
it. Solve
The
problems.
formula to success.
Solve problems for people you care about, and realize that like even if you're one in a million, like I think that means there's 8,000 other people on the planet just like you who have that same problem.
So the first step is identify a problem that you truly care about.
Yeah.
And then what's the second step?
You know what? I'll put it this way. The first problem is figure out who you are. Because that's first. I think that comes before everything else. Who are you? What do you care about? What are your gifts, right? What makes you uniquely positioned? Then figure out, okay, who do you care about? What problems do they have? Talk to them, right? Like I didn't build Rec without talking to thousands of creators first about what spaces should be in the spot and what tools do you need and all that. And then third, I think it's about understanding what does the world look like when I solve that problem, right? And how valuable is that? So that way, when you go to other people to help you do it, I could go to an investor and be like, yo, here's a problem I want to solve. Here's why I'm the best person in the world to solve it.
Yeah.
Here's what the world looks like when I solve it. And here's what's in it for you when I accomplish the mission. Right? That's why people invest, like not because they just want to help me.
Yeah.
That's a part of it. But the other part of it is they want to return on their money.
Right.
So you got to be able to help them understand what's in it for them.
What was it like putting together the plan to build out the space? Because it's in a prime location.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
fashion district, which in and of itself is also
Right.
new. What was
Which
it
we
like
still
putting that
we
together?
still know it as the gallery. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
No, I kind of missed the gallery a little bit.
You feel me?
know that, yeah, that,
Grew up in
that
the
feeling.
gallery.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but your question.
Yeah. Yeah, what was like putting together the plan to build out the space in a prime location like that?
Yeah.
You know, and making that happen.
I mean, that was the fact that we got to the gallery, like to the fashion district. That was
Yeah.
just God, bro. Like the plan was never, and Dave will back me on this. Like we never, let's say like 2 years before it happened, we never were like, oh, we're gonna go build our business in the mall. That was never the goal. But we knew that we were outgrowing the warehouse, and we were talking about, do we build something from the ground up? Do we find some building that's already there and then we refurbish it? And we started to just imagine what the next step would look like as far as the space. And God met us halfway, bro. He gave us that opportunity to tour the fashion district before it was open. And as we're having conversations, you know, again, we have that agency, right? The way that happened was we were touring the space trying to figure out how could we help Nike create a marketing campaign to engage local creators, to spread the word. How could we help Levi's, right? And then as we're walking by Levi's and Nike, we look and we're like, well, what's gonna go there? And the guy was like, oh, we're actually having trouble renting out that unit. It's got this crazy box in the middle that no retailer really wants to deal with.
Yeah.
So then we were like, well, what's in the box? And they were like, oh, it's a freight elevator. So I looked at Dave, knowing that we, again, in our warehouse is 4 flights of stairs where we have artists who are carrying amps up every day. it was like, oh, they don't want it because there's an elevator in it. That makes it perfect for us. And from there, we got back to the studio, and we're like, yo, what if we? And at that time, had no money to back up going to the gallery.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I remember we presented it to our team, and Dave told the squad, he was like, yo, some moonshot, but there's a small chance we could potentially go to the gallery. And after that, it was just like, okay, no more if, when, now how.
Wow.
That's just faith, bro.
Yeah.
So we had this whole George Floyd protest going on around the whole world, right?
Yeah, man.
And then all these businesses somehow was like, okay, we need to do something to create more, give money out to these minorities, companies, and help sort of like, you know, people of color out. And so did any company reach out to you? Was this like also did sort of like the protest create any sort of opportunity for you? Anything like? And I know the pandemic came too. Like, talk to us about that, because I do know for you is people have to come into the space, because what you do is
it's a big part of it.
That's big. But so talk to us about the impact of pandemics on you.
Yeah.
And how were companies too responding to you to make sure, like, you know, they're making access to minorities.
Yeah. So just about everything we do has something to do with convening people, right? Whether it's putting people in studios, whether it's throwing events or workshops or whatever. So, and then just for context, right? We had our grand opening in December of 2019.
Yeah.
3 months later, the pandemic started in March of 2020. So we were only open for 3 months before the city was like, yo, you gotta shut down the space.
Wow.
Which was like a roller coaster, like, you know? So at that time, you know, again, like you mentioned, you know, we're talking global pandemic, and then we're talking George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, all this is happening at once. And for us, we were at this space and time where, one, we're like, the fact that we're closing is terrible for us as business owners because our space is closed. How do we do our thing? But bigger than that, it was like, our members are some of the people most affected by the pandemic. Like, we've got traveling musicians and videographers who make 90% of their revenue by getting in front of people, right? If I'm a wedding photographer and I can't shoot weddings because nobody's outside, my revenue goes to zero overnight, right? So one of the things that Dave and I were just pressed on doing early was like, yeah, the four walls of our space are closed, but like, how do we still uphold our mission in a time like now? And what we did was literally, you know, at that point, I think we had like 700 members or something like that, maybe a little less than that. But we're like, all right, let's split the list up and just started calling people, right? And like, normally founders are not calling members of what's happening and yada yada. But we're like, that's what we're doing. Started just calling hundreds of people and was like, yo, what do y'all need right now? And a lot of our members are like, yo, I need money. I need ability to record at home. I need this. I need that. And I think that was one of the most beautiful parts of our journey, because, again, we said, all right, the space isn't here, but we can still empower creatives to do more of what they love to do, which is our mission. And, you know, as Rec, we've been really beautifully positioned between the creative community and the traditional business community. So all these companies who had been saying, oh, yeah, we want to support local creators. Oh, yeah, we want to support Black creatives. We were able to say, yo, let's leverage our positioning here and almost force these companies to put their money where their mouth is. And in doing so, I mean, it was beautiful. There were real champions in these organizations who stepped up and said, yo, I'm willing to put $15, $20, $30, $50,000 up in specific to support Black creators during this time, because we know that they're at a disadvantage. And you know, I got to shout out companies like WXPN, who was a huge partner in that, and Ballard Spar, and man, like Forge, and you know, there was a bunch of amazing companies, and even like, you know, people like Roland who donated equipment, you know, for recording artists to have gear. Like, it was amazing to see that happen, you know. And one of the things that came out of that is we didn't just stop after the pandemic let up. We're like, yo, our creators still need this support. So we were able to build what was called Black Music City, which was in a partnership between Rec Philly, WRTI, the radio station, and WXPN. And we were able to give out over $60,000 in cash grants to creators. And just last week, I don't know if you guys knew this, but we just announced that we're doing a round 2 of that. And we're about to give out $100,000 directly into the hands of Black creators.
Wow.
So that's what it's about, bro. But if we never really, you know, took a step back and said, 1, we're going to survive this pandemic. 2, what do our people need? It was never in the business model for us to be a grant-making organization. You feel me?
Being able to go back to that, because you talk about how you and Dave were asking yourselves, how can you uphold the mission during this time? Like being able to go back to that mission and go back to the why. You know, during the pandemic, a lot of businesses shut down. A lot of businesses closed completely. Were you guys affected by, you know, members, like the members have to cancel, like like how you guys had a team that was, you know, now on salary, or like how was it navigating those
hard, bro.
challenges?
It was super hard. It was the first time ever as a business owner. I told you one of my proudest moments was paying my staff salary and benefits. We had to go through furloughing staff for the first time ever, which was really emotionally challenging. You know, looking people in the face that you know are really busting their ass, and saying, yo, we don't know what comes next. And then obviously members who were like, yo, I want to be in the space. I want to come out. You know, I knew that it was hard for them. So we went ahead and got ahead of it and said, yo, we don't want rec and your membership fee to be another cause of a headache. So anyone who wants to freeze, no penalty at all, you guys can just freeze your account. We'll stop charging you right now. And I think that was a good move, because on the other side of it, as we're making these calls and we're you know, letting people freeze, people realize that it wasn't just a cash grab.
Like that trust, that
community is a real thing. And on the flip side of that, when we got to open the space again, the stat is something like 85% of our members who froze came back within the first 2 weeks. You feel me? And that's what happens when you do right by your people and they know. Like, that's what building brand is about. It's building real trust. Like, even stop using the word brand and we could just say, what's your reputation? Right? Because community ain't built when things are great. Real community is built when things are hard. And we showed up, you know? So, but pandemic was tough, I'm not gonna lie. But I think we got to a great spot. And now, you know, I can say that it's like, if we can survive a pandemic as a physical space, it's like, what can't we survive? You know? So again, if someone like Will Smith is watching, it's like, yo, we got a pandemic proof model. You feel me? triple impact out here, you know? I
mean,
you don't get more solid than that.
The power of all this is people often forget, like, how resilient
that's it, bro.
they are. Like, you can't put nothing in front of artists and expect that they won't make it through it.
That's facts.
You know what I mean?
That's facts,
like, I'm not surprised that you guys were able to keep putting, and I'm not shocked that what you're doing right now, William, and your company, Rec. I'm just excited, bro. I'm excited for you.
Well, listen, we're just getting started, bro.
I'm excited for you, man. So yeah, man, we've been talking about a lot of. Thank you for answering our questions, man. You know,
thank you for amazing questions, bro.
For real. So let's just get to a lighter side or something like that. So I'm sure I keep you guys funny questions.
So I know. I was telling Will that, you know, we definitely owe him some pepper soup.
Y'all owe me some pepper soup, because you know I was ready.
We'll have to add the jollof rice too.
Please do.
So we gotta ask you. Who makes the best jollof rice?
Yo, I don't know. I wanted y'all to bring some, you know, a couple of different joints for me to try, but I have to be honest, I don't know. I don't have enough data. No, I don't.
We definitely gotta.
We gotta.
I'm gonna hold up to that.
We definitely gotta pull up some of the jollof.
What side you on?
I'm on the Nigerian side.
I stay neutral.
He only says that because this country don't make jollof.
By the way, in case you don't know, I'm from Guinea.
Okay, got you.
There's a whole Jollof war going on.
That's what I be hearing.
You know what I mean? Like, I think like in Philly, it might be sneaker war or something.
Yeah,
like,
sneaker wars or what cheesesteak spot you
what
bang
cheese-
with,
yeah,
right?
So there's a whole Jollof thing, but I stay neutral because
Fair enough.
somebody got to bridge the gap. Somebody got to calm down.
All I'm saying, yeah.
Nigeria, man, they be
next time
doing
I
too
come
much,
through,
man.
you gotta have-
I love them though.
You know, you gotta put a couple different bowls on the
But,
table.
Yeah, we want to be mindful of your time because we know you're a busy guy. It is also, what's it, Tuesday today?
It is
We want to close
Tuesday.
out with just one question we always ask our guests. If you could imagine about like a 8-year-old version of Will sitting in front of you right now, giving everything that you know, everything
No,
that you've been
let's
through.
switch up the question this time. Let's switch up the question this
switch it
time.
up? All right, you got it.
Slightly. If the Will right before you took that leap of faith to go live in the studio
Yeah.
and build out
Right.
the future,
Yeah.
what would you tell that person before he embarked on that?
Well, what would you tell that Will?
Yeah, what would you tell that Will, that younger Will?
What would I tell him?
Everything about to go through the ups and downs and,
Yeah.
and
Take your
the
time, man.
opposite side of that fear.
That's real. Look, I'd probably just say, trust yourself. You know what you know. Because I think too often that's the only thing in our way, just not trusting ourselves. So I would say trust yourself, and just remind him that he can. And you know what? And the last thing I would say, you are enough. That's it. That's the only advice I think I would want to impart. Like,
Yeah.
Listen, man, it's been an honor and a
Yeah,
pleasure
man.
to have you on the show.
Appreciate y'all.
It's been a moment, and we're gonna come to you with the pepper soup and the jollof.
please do.
Yeah, we
You-
have
you
to.
can hold us to
Like-
that. You can
like
hold
you
us to
have
that.
to, man.
Say that.
If we don't post anything about we got to, man. This has to happen.
Yeah.
But Will, you the man.
Thank you, brother. Listen, I appreciate what you guys are doing. I mean, you guys are also shining examples, man. I mean, 2 Ivy League grads over here doing amazing
Appreciate
work
that, man.
Hey, man.
and sharing stories across the diaspora. That's what it's
Thank
all
you.
about.
Thank you.
So
We appreciate you.
thank you.
This
guys.
pepper soup talk. We're back at you in the next one.
All right.